women, by and large, are significantly inferior to men at firefighting. Wham! Smirk. I seek the I know this is pretty radical thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. Fembots can essentially kiss my ass. Progressivism is a societal cancer. If you don't like it, Tumblr is that way. Oh, hi there. Welcome to the Freedom Alternative. Okay, let's talk about human euthanasia for a little bit, shall we? First things first, let us properly define the terms. Human euthanasia is not the right to death, as its advocates claim. The right to die, i.e. to end your own life, is already in place everywhere. No law can stop one to throw himself off a building, take a lethal drug cocktail, or apply a myriad of other methods to commit suicide. Human euthanasia is in fact the legal right to demand from other people, doctors in particular, to kill you. Consequently, it also means that those people, doctors or nurses, are legally absolved from the responsibility of killing you. There, I said it. Human euthanasia is legalized murder under the guise of consent and dignity. The common argument against which what I just said is usually in this form. Oh, but it only applies to terminally ill patients, particularly those who can't do it themselves, and it usually involves rather passive moves, such as withdrawing medical services that essentially keep the patient alive. This argument at a first glance may seem reasonable, except that pesky thing called reality tends to refuse to work that way, as the overwhelming majorities of the cases are not so clear-cut as the poster child cases used by the activists to push for such legislation. Here's a very good example of a moral hazard that progressives would rather ignore or double down on the party line and cry dignity and choice. Newsweek titles, Healthy 24-year-old granted right to die in Belgium. Right from the title, the reader is misled. The individual in question already has the right to die by her own hands. What's being granted to her is the privilege of being killed by someone else, and that someone else also has the legal privilege of being unaccountable for premeditated murder. And goes like this. Doctors in Belgium are granting a 24-year-old woman who is suffering from depression but is otherwise healthy the right to die, as she qualifies for euthanasia under the Belgian law, even though she does not have a terminal life-threatening illness. The 24-year-old woman, known simply as Laura, has been given the go-ahead by health professionals in Belgium to receive a lethal injection after spending both her childhood and adult life suffering from suicidal thoughts, she told local Belgian media. Belgium passed a law to legalize euthanasia in 2002, the second country in the world to do so after the Netherlands. The law states that Belgian doctors can help patients to end their lives if they freely express a wish to die because they are suffering from intractable and unbearable pain. Much relativism in here. How much pain is intractable and unbearable? Is a patient suffering from mental health issues really in a position to freely express a desire to be murdered by the medical establishment? The article continues. Over the past few years, there has been a sharp increase in the number of euthanasia cases in Belgium. In 2013, there were 1,807 deaths recorded, compared with 1,432 in 2012. More than half of last year's cases were patients aged 70 and over, but there are an increasing number of young people requesting to die legally, with the majority citing depression as their intractable and unbearable pain. It gets even worse. Earlier this year, in February, the parliament in Belgium passed a bill also allowing euthanasia for terminally ill children without any age limit by 86 votes to 44. The vote makes it the first country in the world to have legalized euthanasia without an age limit. In the Netherlands, the first country to legalize euthanasia, sick children are allowed to request it, but only if they are 12 years or older. Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. Am I the only one in the world who thinks this is utter madness? Fucking hell. Look, so essentially, teens at the age of 13 can't legally consent to have sex with an 18-year-old because they might allegedly suffering from long-term effects, although not in Switzerland or until recently until in Spain, but it's fine and dandy to consent to being killed. How is it okay to legally sanction the murder of healthy people, including children, not as punishment for a deed, but as care and help? The fact of the matter is that mental health, being the serious topic that it is still in its infancy. We don't fully understand why depression occurs, why some people can move on and some others can't, and the whole plethora of vital questions are still unanswered and will probably remain unanswered for quite some time until the human race figures out how the brain works. But in the meantime, the solution should not be to just kill the patients because they say so. Concerns over the legalization of human euthanasia have been raised including by the secular world, namely by those in the bioethics studies. For instance, Karine Brochier, a project manager with the Brussels-based European Institute of Bioethics, says the following: "There is absolutely no way for healthcare professionals to measure another person's mental suffering to decide if they should receive euthanasia. Euthanasia is not the answer to all human suffering. We need to develop better palliative care for people, something I believe Belgium is not currently doing." Common sense should tell us that Ms. Brochier is right on the money. How much mental suffering is too much? How do you measure it? How subjected to error is the scale? No one really knows. Yet it's somehow perfectly okay, without knowing anything relevant to the subject matter, to just grant the doctors a mandate to kill people because they say so, even if they're children or people who may indeed not be capable to make a judgment in the first place. Amazing. Moreover, empirical evidence has shown consistently that most people who commit suicide may not actually want to die. 90% of the people who survive suicide attempts, including the most lethal types, like shooting oneself in the head, don't end up killing themselves later. A 1978 study of 515 people who were preventing from attempting suicide on the Golden Gate Bridge between 1937 and 1971 found that after more than 26 years, 94% of them were still alive or had died of natural causes. Link in the low bar with details. So knowing all this, one must hold a deeply ingrained ideological interest to argue so virulently for what is essentially legalized murder. The reality shows us that in most cases, the things are not as clear-cut. It is not really a clear-cut cancer patient paralyzed or in severe pain who would die in a week or two anyway, but with even more pain. Most cases are far less severe than that, and legally sanctioning the murdering of such individuals makes the entire society complicit to murder. Because let's be crystal clear on this, the Belgian taxpayer will be forced to pay for the killing of this young woman, adding further layers to the moral hazard created by such legislation. Look, there's no point in denying that there are indeed situations where quick death is indeed dignifying and preferable to prolonged agony and misery. Most religious folks would say that's for God to decide. I'm an atheist, and as such, I think the individual should decide. However, that doesn't mean that the individual should get the legal protection to bring other people to partake in his or her self-destruction. It also doesn't make it morally right to force the entire society to contribute to one's self-destruction, which is the inevitable result of including euthanasia under the socialized health care. The reality is that one can't make suicide illegal, nor should one punish the survivors of attempted suicide. However, suicide should actively be discouraged to the extent that it's reasonably possible. And I think that not legalizing socialized medical-sponsored euthanasia is a good and responsible step towards discouraging suicide. It's a sad state of affairs when we need organizations such as Not Dead Yet to make the case for caring about human life as opposed to handing legal privileges to bureaucrats in the medical field to end human life. It speaks volumes about the level of moral decay when my position is now somehow extreme. It's also ironic when I see libertarians arguing side by side with progressivist fascists that euthanasia is somehow what civilized people do. Amazing. Anyway, with that being said, don't forget to click the subscribe button, follow me on Twitter at FreedomAlternat, and visit the Patreon page and consider supporting this channel to keep these videos coming. Thanks for watching.